Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 43 for March 31st, 2017. Howdy folks, Daniel Rubino here, editor-in-chief of Windows Central, joined by Zach Bowden, also our senior editor for Windows and Windows 10 related content, and we're here to give you guys the latest news on Microsoft and what's been happening with Windows and Surface and all that good stuff. Same changing up the beginning a bit, trying to make this a little bit more professional, so people who are first-time listeners will have more context. Anyway, this week we'll be talking about the Creators Update and when it's actually coming out, as well as our full massive review that we did of it already, so that's really good. We're also talking about Windows 10 Mobile and its version of the Creators Update and how that's coming out. Surface coming to more markets, finally. The never-ending story of when will Surface be available in my country is going to get answered shortly. We'll also talk about the WhartonBrooks phone, also known as the Big Nothing Burger for the week. And that's a new expression I'm just starting to get used to, and I really do not like it, but I'm trying to be hip with the kids, so Nothing Burger it is. The Samsung Galaxy S8, although not running Windows 10 Mobile, in fact, far from it, is a new Microsoft phone, apparently. And we'll be talking about the surprise appearance of the new Lyft app, which doesn't really work very well, but it looks really nice, and I'm sure it will be working soon, but it was nice to have it. So, Zach, how are you doing this week on this nice Friday?
I'm not too bad. Oh, got a phone call there. I'm not too bad. I am just recovering from my extremely detailed Windows 10 Creators Update review that I had written over the weekend. Since the Creators Update has been announced and its date and stuff has been announced by Microsoft, we were also allowed to publish our review, which came out on Wednesday, the Creators Update review, and Microsoft also announced a number of different things, such as the availability date, which we had reported, or I had tweeted that it could be April 11th quite a few weeks ago. And Microsoft has confirmed that April 11th will be the day in which Microsoft begins rolling out the Creators Update to the public. Now, much like the anniversary update, they will be rolling this out in waves, but they have decided to take a much longer approach this time, so they'll be taking several months to roll out the Creators Update to RS1 devices, and then eventually even older devices. So Redstone 1, then Threshold 2, then Threshold 1. So, I mean, there are still a few people running build 10.2.40 and whatnot. But with it running out on April 11th, if you're somewhat tech savvy but not in the Insider program, you can actually get the Creators Update early, starting April 5th via the Update Assistant tool, which Microsoft will release. Now, that leaked earlier this week, but it was kind of working but not working. Some people were having issues with it since it did leak and it wasn't actually ready to go yet. But by the time April 5th rolls out, it should be working just fine.
I just loved how fascinated people were with trying to figure out the exact build for the quote-unquote RTM, because it's so important.
I know, it's always a thing, like, oh, it could be this build, it could be that build, but then there's always once it's decided which build it is, there's always a group of people who don't believe it. They're like, no, right, it has to be another build, it can't be this one. No, it is this one, build 15063. And speaking of, that build actually reached the release previewing this week, which is big news.
Yes, that was actually, I thought, the bigger news, because it's kind of like crazy. Release preview is almost always what's on production, and it's barely different, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is like, some people on release preview are going to get a big surprise. Right. Now, I just want to mention briefly, I've actually upgraded 5 computers in the last few days to the Creators Update, and I want to clarify this, we're not from insider rings. These were from production, so this was the actual experience you would get. And first of all, I like the new out-of-box experience. It's really nice. It's very clean. The update was surprisingly fast, both to download and actually do the update. This wasn't like, I didn't feel like my computer was, and this has to do with the way the experience works. I didn't feel like my computer was going through a metamorphosis that could risk everything. It felt like just like sort of like a minor thing, but it was pretty quick on how fast it went, and just very clean. And I like the little dialogue screens that they have now. And I think it was a pretty good experience. I was impressed with that. And I have to say, so far, 0 issues. I'm running this on Surface Studio, which is what I'm on right now. No problems there, except for our Brio cameras, which we always run to that little issue before we do a podcast. But I just put on this Razer Blade today. I have it on a few Surfaces. And I forgot if I put it on my Samsung laptop too, and my Dells as well, and HP. So I don't know, probably more than 5 computers at this point. But all running solid. Speaking of HP, well, I'll mention that later. But anyways, yeah, that's my experience so far. So if you're holding out, I think you're safe to go with it right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're only going to be fixing minor bugs from here on out. Right. There's not really any major showstopper bugs that you can expect to walk into at this point. So with the build running out to the release preview ring, it's now available in all of the insider rings, which should technically mean there were 10 million people now testing the insider program, because Microsoft did announce 10 million insiders not too long ago. I'm not entirely sure if that means 10 million active insiders or just 10 million insiders since the program started. I'm pretty sure it's the latter there. It's if it was 10 million people testing the creators update, that's a big number. That's a big it's a big deal for Microsoft. Microsoft already have the creators update in 10 million people's hands, if that's the case, which is great news for them. They get all the feedback in the world. They can actually roll out the creators update on April 11th and have no worries, because it's already reached 10 million people, and it's even gone through the old anniversary to creators update sort of upgrade phase, which is kind of the big one. That's where Microsoft are worried the most. That's where they have to get it right the most, because that's kind of where everybody else is, and that's the process people will be taking. Whereas upgrading build over build in the fast ring isn't as sort of scary or dangerous, because as insiders, if there is a catastrophic failure, you could just reinstall. You know how to do it. But if Microsoft were to roll out the creators update on April 11th and there was a showstopper bug which caused installs to fail and PCs to stop booting, then that would be a problem. So with 10 million people, or supposedly 10 million people testing the Creators Update upgrade path between Anniversary and Creators Update, it ensures a smoother rollout on April 11th, which is very nice indeed. But yeah, very exciting. April 11th, if you are planning to upgrade officially, as Microsoft would say. April 5th, if you want to get it early, and if you want to get it even earlier, you can download the ISOs now, because they are also available if you are an insider, which is great.
Yeah, overall, and someone asked in comments quickly, how long did the update take? Obviously, it's going to vary on computers. On my Razer Blade, which is a Core i7, it's pretty performant. It has a fast SSD. I would say it probably took about 15, 20 minutes, maybe just 15 minutes. It was actually really, really fast. I mean, yeah, I would say probably no more than 50 minutes. I was pretty surprised about how quickly it all went together. And it was a nice experience. And I think that's because, as we get further along, some of these changes aren't going to be as obviously significant as when Windows 10 first came out. Instead, they're sort of smaller updates. And, it's been pretty good, though. So far, no issues. I'm always kind of happy about that. But I think that's something we should expect, like...
Yeah. The Creators Update, I did write the review. I'm pretty happy with all of the new improvements. I have sort of said this isn't as major of an update as Microsoft first implied it would be. A few features were cut and whatnot. But the stuff that did show up are nice improvements. It is, I would say, the best version of Windows 10 yet, as it should be. There were small improvements like Nightlight, which I know many people would enjoy. I know I don't like installing third-party apps and tweaks and stuff.
Right, yeah. So, Nightlight's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a very basic version of Flux or Flux, however you want to pronounce it.
I wouldn't say it's basic. It's actually pretty advanced. I mean, the big things I think that were important that they put in were automatic sunrise, sunset based on your zip code. Or actually, it's not based on your zip code, but it's based on your time zone. So that's there right now. And then you can also set it manually. So... of course, you can turn it on and off manually, but you can set your own times. Like sunrise, sunset to me is a little too restrictive. Like I don't need it at like 7 p.m., but at 10 p.m. because I'm up late every night. That's when I want it. So I like that feature. I also love how dark. Like you can make it super red on some displays, and it's like it's hilarious. I don't know who's using it. Like unless you're like, I don't know, military in a tent and you're a Navy SEAL team and you're like, my Windows is too bright. You want to put it in the full red mode for that, experience. But yeah, overall, just kind of cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. Along with the Creators Update news this week, Microsoft also announced the Creators Update general availability for mobile, which was a surprise to me. I was not expecting them to even mention Windows Phone at this point, but they did. They said the Creators Update for Windows Phone will start rolling out starting April 25th, so around 2 weeks after the PC version, which is about right. That's the kind of what happened with the anniversary update for PC, then mobile. They're doing the same with the Creators Update. It kind of just gives Microsoft a bit of breathing room between rolling the PC update out and checking for any major issues and fixing them before focusing on mobile. And I say focus because it's not. I mean, it's not really focusing, is it?
Now, putting jokes aside about the status of Windows 10 Mobile, I will say I'm running this on my Elite X3, and it's been really, really good. I know there's been a lot of negativity about Windows 10 Mobile, obviously lately, people switching phones, and totally understandable. I'm never going to try to convince people 2017 don't get the Galaxy S8, go for an Elite X3. Like, I mean, that's just ludicrous. I will say I'm still not yet ready to give it up. I still use it. I really like the RS2 on the Elite X3. It's been running very well. Also runs very well on the Idle 4S and, of course, in the 950 and XL. But everything feels a little bit zippier and faster, whether it's Windows Hello or just using a lot of the apps. Everything just feels a little bit more polished. Now, what I was saying last week, I still have, and I haven't tried the maps. I know it's had a few updates since I last ranted about it, but I'm still, not happy with navigation. I'm curious if that's improved any, but my hopes aren't too high. But I'm still using it every day. Like, I have, like, right in front of me, my iPhone, which is on the second line, but I don't get calls or texts on it, so I really don't use it. I use it for navigation mostly. But, and same with the Galaxy S8, we'll talk more about that later. It's like, you and I are both, in awe of the hardware. It's like the S8 looks fantastic, but then we're like, oh, that's right, it runs Android. So, and then immediately all hopes are dashed. So I don't know, we're still in that minority, but I like this update. I know it doesn't bring the features that people rightly want. It's still obviously behind in many ways, but I feel like, and this is kind of funny to say it, that they're getting the fundamentals right finally, which is funny because it's been out for 18 months now. But I feel like, the problem with Windows 10 Mobile is they're not making a mobile OS anymore, right? And we see this over and over, but the negative effect of that is you don't have a mobile team whose job is 24/7 working on making a mobile phone, which is kind of how it used to be. Now they're just part of the Windows team, and that means it's being co-developed with everything else, and so it's not a huge high priority / so 18 months it's been in development, but it's probably only been like 6 months of actual mobile development. I don't know, maybe I'm glossing over that a bit, but it's a very different process, I think, and that's kind of why it still feels that way.
Yeah, no, I've definitely said it. The Creators Update is kind of like the anniversary update made it bearable, not bearable, made it actually quite good. It was, compared to the original Windows 10 mobile release, which was buggy and just had issues here, there, and everywhere. The anniversary update kind of perfected it in that essence, and the Creators Update has now refined that, so it's a lot better. It runs a lot better on lower hardware as well. So even if you hack it onto, say, a Lumia 920, it will run, and I would say you can get by if you really wanted to. Now, with Windows 10 on the older unsupported devices, and if you're running it on an older supported device like the Lumia 930, it runs great. It runs almost just as well as Windows Phone 8.1 used to. I wouldn't say on par. Windows Phone 8.1 might be still a little bit snappier here and there, just due to how Windows Phone 8.1 was built. But Windows 10 Mobile is up there now. It's not a bad experience at all anymore, and I think that's really nice. And it makes us wonder. Well, makes me wonder what they've got planned for Redstone 3, because they have publicly said that Redstone 3 will be coming for mobile, but we don't know what will be in it yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the big question. Like, I think everybody's waiting for that moment where it's like, okay, you kind of have this foundation built for this mobile experience. When are you going to start innovating again? Because right now, and that's not to say there's no innovation. There's a lot of still cool things going on with Windows 10 Mobile that other OSs still don't do as well. But what we're talking about, those original features, like what we were talking about on last week's podcast, which you can listen to on the end where we kind of rant a bit. We're still looking for that stuff, that magic to start happening. And it's an interesting question. Is it ever going to happen? I still want Microsoft App Build. I'm going to keep saying this every week until Build, just to say something, be like, we're finally going to, it doesn't have to be phone. I mean, I realize they use this word mobile, and it's sort of vague because it doesn't specifically have to mean phone. It could just mean any kind of mobile experience, but at least say something on it so that, because it's getting weird now. It's really getting strange. Obviously the OSs keep on going. It's there. It's being developed, but it's like the hardware is evaporating. Their market share is evaporating. It's like, then the Samsung thing, which we'll talk about soon. But like what's the end game with all of this? Like, what are we working towards? And the fans now the hardcore ones are dropping off, and you can't blame them, but because no one knows the end game, So that's the weird thing.
I mean, they've got to say something at Build at this point, even if they're planning to kill it later this year. I'm not saying they are.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of like the thing, right? It's like, I think if Microsoft came out and said, like, listen, we're done with phones. Yeah. Phones, we're just like, we'll do laptops and tablets, but the phone thing is, we're just done with that. If they at least said that, like, I mean, that would at least be closure.
Right.
It's sort of like, I feel like I've had relationships like this. It's like, are we still going out? Like, what's going on here? Just give us closure, Microsoft. And, and if you're not planning to break up with us, tell us,
Yeah. It's not, you think it's not difficult just to say, yeah, no, we've got plans, or no, we don't have plans. They won't say anything. They're just like, yeah, we're committed to mobile.
Ryerson kind of said something about this, a few months ago, with why they keep Windows 10 and ARM and stuff like that. Like,
right, but
and that was something, but it was still pretty vague. You
can also interpret his comments as Windows 10 and ARM for tablets and laptops, not Windows phones, which is what we're more interested in. Like, but what about the phone stuff? They haven't really commented on Windows running on a phone type device and whatnot. They still won't say it's coming or not coming.
You would think. Like, they can't be getting rid of phone for the simple fact that the messaging app and Skype keep getting developed.
Yeah.
Like, why would they bothered with messaging and Skype if that wasn't like a part of the long-term plan somehow?
I don't know. It is. You know what? You can't really question Microsoft logic with all
I
this
still
stuff.
love also a lot of the phone stuff in Windows Phone.
Mm-hmm.
I love how like my phone, like when I'm on a call and I pull it away from my ear, it goes to speakerphone. It has these options for routing, and I like using Truecaller. Truecaller works very well on Windows 10 Mobile. I think I haven't used it on my iPhone. It's on my iPhone, but I don't get calls on that one. But like last time I used it, it wasn't because iOS has so much more restrictions that Truecaller can't hook into it as much. But Windows Phone has seemingly pretty good integration. I don't know. I still like it, so we'll see.
Yeah, use what you like. If you're familiar with the platform and you get by with it just fine, stick with it. I'm sticking with Windows Phone for as long as possible.
Someone says, with the SMS stuff, don't they plan on using that with Android? Yeah, but like they could have released the SMS thing just for Android, and
yeah, that would have been a better idea.
Let's not kid ourselves. The idea of doing it even on Windows 10 Mobile wasn't trivial. It wasn't like, just write a few lines of code and your SMSs will sync, And they had to do it with dual SIM devices too. Don't forget. I mean, that's not. There's a lot of dual SIM Windows phones, and it works there too, which is probably not easy. And I don't think Android. Are there really any dual SIM Androids? At least not popular devices.
Yeah, there's quite a few. The OnePlus 3T is a dual SIM.
Okay, I wonder if it works there. I'm kind of curious, but I mean, yeah, they could have just said like, "No, we're canceling phone. We're not doing that anymore. So why bother? We'll just do it for Android. Like, why extend the misery like for a couple more months? Well,
I mean, let's be fair. We've been miserable since 2015.
Right.
We haven't really had anything since then, which is unfortunate. So. Yeah, Creators Update, all good stuff. Reviews are pretty positive for PC and for mobile, so I definitely recommend your update on the 11th and the 25th when they roll out. The Xbox update's actually already available, which is pretty interesting.
And we should also mention that on April 11th, it's going to be a slower rollout than the previous rollout, so there's a good chance you won't automatically get it. It depends on your computer. I think we expect Surfaces to go first, probably newer PCs as well, but they're going to do it a lot slower so they can get feedback and everything like that. And they also know they try to keep people having to restart their PC only once a month. But there are multiple ways to, of course, get it. Well, you can get it right now just by joining Release Preview, and you'll get it probably in the next 12 hours if you do it now, maybe even faster. But if you also use that update tool, of course, you can force it. And that's how I've been either putting them to Release Preview or just installing the ISO. But yeah, so just keep that in mind.
Speaking of Surfaces and whatnot, Microsoft announced this week that they are rolling out the Surface Book Performance Base to more markets, finally. So after being out on the market for 4 months, 5 months at this point. It's finally coming to a number of new countries: Austria, China, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Hong Kong, Japan, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And it will be rolling out, or it will be available to buy on April 20th. You can pre-order it now. But the question is, or the question I have is, who wants to buy a laptop from 2015 in 2017?
Right. This is getting to the Apple issue, although Apple didn't have too many problems with it. I mean, they still sold MacBooks, despite they don't keep up they just released their brand new MacBook, which has Skylake, which to me is egregious, but okay. But it does sort of throw water on the idea Surface Book 2 is right around the corner.
Yeah, it does.
That's kind of like a weird thing,
Because if I started to think that the reason Microsoft hadn't announced or began making the Surface Book performance space available in other countries was because there would be no need as a Surface Book 2 was coming. But now they have started rolling out to quite a number of new countries. It would be odd to roll that out and then have Microsoft announce a Surface Book 2 in a couple months' time. If a Surface Book 2 is coming, I'm not expecting it till at least the end of this year now, or at least maybe even next year.
It is curious that they decided against doing a Kaby Lake refresh because, from my understanding, Kaby Lake, and we've seen a lot of manufacturers do this, but Kaby Lake refresh, Dell's done it, of course, HP's done it, although HP did rework significantly the Spectre series. Razer has done it now. She also mentioned the Razer Blade Pro is getting Kaby Lake.
Yeah.
And so this doesn't require significant reworking of the internals. Razer didn't change anything. They kept the battery the same. They just dropped in the new chip, and I think they updated the RAM a bit, which is soldered on. But I'm curious why they didn't do that, because Kaby Lake runs really well. It's cooler. It runs about 10 degrees cooler on some devices. Gives you that little extra battery life. We're talking only half hour, maybe 45 minutes on some devices, but that's a nice little extra boost for some people. It gives you that peace of mind. I'm kind of curious why they haven't done that. But it does lend credence to the idea that Surface Book 2, of course, and this is what I expect, won't be that, right? It won't be just refreshed with some new hardware. It's going to be kind of really updated, refined design with some new innovation going on there. And I think that's what they're kind of working towards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still hoping for a Surface 4 with ARM later in the year, because obviously Windows 10 on ARM isn't due till Resto 3. It would make sense to have a devices event in October where they have, we've got the new Surface Book here, runs full Windows 10 Pro, blah, blah, normal stuff. You got your Surface Pros to do the same thing. Then you got the normal Surface, which runs Windows 10 on ARM. This is kind of like the device we expect OEMs to make based on ARM processors. Would make perfect sense. It's what they've done with all their other sort of device types. And then maybe this year, I'm doubting it'll be this year, but sometime in 2018, a Surface phone where it's this is the thing that you plug it in, it runs windowed apps and stuff. It's great. Who knows what they're planning?
Your camera.
Yeah, I know. I kept trying to focus it back whilst I was talking.
But I know what the problem is. You're too British and you're too white, and it's it doesn't have any contrast to work with.
Okay, thanks. I'll try not to be offended at that comment. Microsoft also announced the Surface Studio is coming to a couple more markets, I believe, and the UK is not one of them, so I don't care. I can't believe that they're not bringing it to the UK yet. This is outrageous. It's not funny.
Yeah, I gotta say, and I'll probably do maybe an article about this, about how Creators Update runs very well in Studio. It's actually made me I don't want to say hate it less, because that's way too strong. I don't hate this Studio at all. But I had some, real issues with the way it performs, with the hybrid drive and everything. But the hybrid drive and performance, it just feels a lot better now. I have a lot less stutters and weird. Basically, that's what it was. It was stutters. You'd launch an app, and if it's in the background, you bring it up, and it would take that second. It was with the hard drive. And this is why I don't like hybrid drives. Honestly, though, if the way this is running right now, if you didn't tell me it was a hybrid drive, I would just assumed it was SSD or something like that. And maybe it's because a lot of the core apps I'm running, of course, are probably in the SSD part. But overall, I'm just not experiencing the same issues I had. Now, I still occasionally do wake up every morning and my Studio has just magically reset itself, which is frustrating. It's never happened when I'm using it, so it's got to be something else. But it overall runs really well, and it's just I mean, even using the pen more now that it's in more apps and everything. So if you've been seeing me on Twitter, I've been doing a lot more inking, which I have to admit is pretty fun. And I'm convinced inking for people who don't draw, and I'm one of those. I just have no artistic inclination whatsoever. It really does depend on the device and how it works. And, some of the specters, and we'll talk about this more next week, it just works for me. I'm more inclined to use the pens, and I'm getting like a little bit more into it now that more scenarios are available to the end user within apps. And I think it's probably one of the biggest stories about Windows 10 is the inking thing and how now it's slowly extending its tentacles into throughout the OS. And it's a really cool thing. Even handwriting recognition in apps is really nice now. I started using it on Twitter every once in a while, and it works surprisingly well. It's just kind of a neat thing. So,
yeah, no, I mean, even with the Surface Studio coming to a couple more markets, it's not like many people are going to be buying it. It's still extremely expensive, and it is for like a certain type of audience, such as, I guess, Dan. No, it would be more artists than Dan.
Well, I mean, and this is probably what they're waiting for some kind of mobile device, whether it's a phone-ish kind of thing or a small, pocket surface. Obviously the pen and inking is going to be a centerpiece for that, but you really want it to be this sort of like note-taking, you really need a robust story to tell there because, Samsung in their Note has the pen thing, but I've never seen actual people using it or a lot of people wanting to. I mean, there is that group, right? There is a subgroup that really want it, but the problem with Samsung and what they do with Android is it's always like they have to hack it into the OS and stuff like that, where Microsoft has the opportunity to work the OS and much deeper, along with what's cool now is those APIs are out there for developers to create apps that can basically mimic the exact same experience. And I think they're still waiting for that to sort of fully, mature. And so it's not like, oh yeah, and there's a pen, and it's like, okay, you can, do these three things with it. I think they're waiting to have like a real robust ability, and it's getting there, right? I think with this update, it's definitely getting there.
I think it's worth noting as well for anyone interested in the performance base, the Skylake chips, although they're not, this year's chip, they're not bad. The Kaby Lake isn't that much of an improvement over Skylake. You could buy a Skylake laptop today and be fine with it for the next few years, probably even longer. A lot
of the performance stuff with Kaby Lake is because literally the chips are clocked higher.
Mm-hmm.
They're between 200 and 400 megahertz faster, and so that's why you actually kind of get that boost.
I mean, yeah, the performance base doesn't have the newest of GPUs and whatnot.
Although, don't forget, you do get 4K Netflix streaming with Kaby Lake.
Oh, is that only on Kaby Lake?
It's only on Kaby Lake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So part of the Windows 10 Creators Update is Edge can do 4K Netflix streaming. And it's the first browser to be able to do it, but you do need a Kaby Lake device, which means, hilariously enough, my Surface Studio can't do it.
That's hilarious. Neither can my desktop. My desktop can't do it. That's not even funny.
Right. Of course, a lot of people don't have 4K displays anyway, but although the Surface Studio is higher than 4K, so it's like there's a real kick for your wallet. Real kick for your wallet, I do feel bad for people who bought, not really, because it's still an awesome device, but the Razer Blade Pro, to come back to that, and there's an expensive $4,000 laptop. And just real quickly, they updated the processor. Now they did something really cool with that. The original processor is a Core i7 6700, so that's Skylake, and the route for Kaby Lake would have been a Core i7 7700U, and that would have been like, that's what you would expect, like, okay, Kaby Lake refresh. But they didn't. They put in a 7820, I believe it is, which is a whole different branch of that new Kaby Lake. And it's overclockable. So not only is it clocked higher, so now it goes up to 3.9 gigahertz for turbo. And it's clocked higher on its base too. I think it's at 3.5 gigahertz. But now you can overclock it to, I believe, 4.3 gigahertz, which is pretty insane for a laptop. I mean, anytime you talk about overclocking in a laptop, it's a little bizarre. Now, they kept the GTX 1080 the same, so no 1080 Ti. They did significantly improve the RAM. It went from 2100 megahertz to 2667. So that's actually a big jump. And it's THX certified now for audio and visual. All that means really is for the display. They basically calibrated it out of the factory, which they usually do need a little calibration. So they do that now to meet THX standards. And the audio for headphones is got better hardware in there, so it doesn't have crosstalk and feedback and all the kind of minor issues. Now, I forgot that Razer had bought THX. And, it's like, oh, that's why they did it. It's like, it took them a few months to get it there, but that's kind of a cool thing. It's the first laptop that's certified by THX, which I guess is apropos. But that's coming out next few weeks. We'll be actually reviewing that device with that too. But very cool. I love that laptop. That laptop's one of those things that's it's so crazy, but once you start using it, it's actually really nice to use, except for the keyboard. The keyboard's a little strange, but
yeah, I've heard mixed messages, mixed response with that. Is it like that fake mechanical keyboard in the thing? Like, oh yeah, it's mechanical, but it's not really mechanical.
It's mechanical-ish. It just feels like no other keyboard I've ever typed on. It feels like you're kind of typing on popcorn. If that makes, and it's not. And I'm not. And I said this in a review. It's not that it's bad. It's just different. And all that means is if you spent time, anyone who really went out and bought this, and I didn't go out and buy it. Obviously, we had a review unit. If you went and bought this, you would obviously probably make this one of your main computers, I would hope. In which case, you'd have no problem getting used to it. It's just one of those things. It just takes a little time to get used to. But, yeah, it's just different. But the trackpad's really good, too.
Yeah, and that's the kind of... It's funny, but the Surface Book, one of the reasons I love it so much is the trackpad. You just can't beat the Surface Book trackpad. It's just... I
would say companies like HP are catching on to this stuff. I really think if you can't afford Surface Book... go for one of the Spectres, including the 4K one, the 4K 13-inch, which is out now, and
I'd agree.
Maybe I'll have a review on that soon. But like, it's seriously, it's like as good quality hardware at half the price, and so it's like for me, it's a perfect no-brainer. I think HP is doing some really neat stuff.
Moving on to our next story, a new Windows Phone is apparently in the works. And we've known about this Windows Phone for some time. Being built under the company or somebody called WhartonBrooks. WhartonBrooks?
Yes.
WhartonBrooks? I don't know. The company name. They're building a Windows Phone. And today we had the scoop, I guess, on the new phone. And it's not what we were expecting. Is it, Dan?
Well, I think it was. I think it was both what we were expecting, but also... what we were hoping wasn't what we were expecting.
Right. Well, this company, they sort of hyped up that they were building a Windows Phone for the fans. And when somebody says for the fans, in my mind, I thought, right, that's going to be great. It's going to be super thin. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be built really well. Super high specs inside. It's going to be the best phone ever.
It's something that's true, actually. I mean, but go on.
It turns out the phone, I don't remember its name, the
moment. Molly.
The moment, or whatever they are calling it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Is it's more of a mid-ranger. It's a 5-inch 720p display, which it's basically designed off of the Moli X1, which Dan has in his hand there. It has a Snapdragon 617 in it, 3 gigabytes of RAM, which does mean it supports Continuum, but it's not a high-end device by any way or means. And it's an Indiegogo campaign, so it's not a thing that's already in production. You have to sort of give them money for them to be able to put it into production if it reaches its goal, which is $1,100,000. I think I can't remember, that's off the top of my head. It's $1 million around there. So if this campaign hits $1 million, this phone will go into production, and you will get this WhartonBrooks Windows Phone. Dan, what do you think?
I mean, this is one of those things, if it wasn't so overhyped, it would be... This is actually a pretty cool phone. Like, I don't want to, knock it. Like, it's super thin. The build quality is really good on it. It does feel nice. It's a fingerprint magnet because it's got glass on the back. The camera is still blah. And this is still an issue. If you listen to last week's podcast, I talked about how Microsoft just really needs to be able to give OEMs the ability to create good cameras. But it's a really nice phone. Like it's a great size. It fits in the hand well. The build quality is nice. It's actually, the display is actually really good on it. Even I've always said Windows doesn't need super high displays. I think the error with the 950 was that they put a QHD display in there when they should have just used full HD, and it would have given it much better battery life. I don't think you needed QHD for that one. While it's nice to have that super high resolution, the iPhone still doesn't have high resolution. Still looks really good. It's more about the type of display and how the OS works that really drives that, I think. So no complaints there. I do hate how it has these things, these little lids that come off to block the ports, and they do it because it's sort of like a water resistance thing, which I kind of get, but it's just more trouble. Like if you want to go plug your headphones in, it's like, ugh, this just feels very inelegant, and I would never use those. I almost want to rip them off. But so if you took this, added, improved the specs a little bit, gave me the color in white because I think it looks really nice in white, and plus I would hide the fingerprints. I would have been fine with that, just as a low key, like, hey, this mid range device is coming out. It's going to be super affordable, but it's going to give a really good experience, good battery life. I forgot if they put USB Type C. That was the other thing. This is micro USB.
It's it's a micro USB on the WhartonBrooks phone as well.
Yeah, see, it's dead to me. I hate micro USB. It's like I can't do that anymore. But if it was coming like with that, like it's one of those like, okay, that's kind of cool. That would have been really for the fans. And honestly, it's one of those things Microsoft should be doing, right? Because they're in a better financial position to take the hit on that for the fans. Whereas here we are, WhartonBrooks, and you gotta give this company a little credit. Like they basically said, well, we're going to try to create this own phone and bring it to market, and that's literally against all odds. And it's like it's not easy to do. And we are, I talked about this on a few podcasts ago about microeconomies, and you can basically go out now and create a product and, have it designed with 3D printers and all this, and then like go to China and find a factory who will make it for you. And like, you could do that now. And like, as a non-existent huge company. And that's really neat, but there's still that gap between what that is and versus like what Samsung is doing and LG and, some other companies. And that's kind of where we are right now. I don't think this is going to do anything for anybody. It's literally an old phone. And I don't know. It's like I said, it's about expectations. And I think that's probably the biggest issue right now. It's like it was hyped up to be something brand new. Instead, it's something from last year. They can go on Amazon and buy. And even though some of the specs are going to be better, it's still not like, like I could have come up with 5 other ways to make this phone a little bit better. And it could have been a really nice phone, but it's like, people who are expecting something different,
Well, they did sort of overhype it themselves. Let's be fair. It wasn't. Well, I don't think it was just the fans alone thinking, "Oh, they're gonna just create the most amazing thing." They kind of were like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna love this. This is gonna be amazing." It's just another smartphone, and I honestly don't think this campaign will reach its goal of $1.1 million. That's a lot of money. It's not cheap, and that's not something to laugh at. That's a good sum of money. It's going to have a lot of backers buying this phone, because obviously how this works is Indiegogo campaign is you buy the phone on the webpage, and that counts towards the $1 million. I don't see that many people buying this phone. This phone's $299. I think you get $10 off if you buy it now through the Indiegogo campaign. You're going to have a lot of people who believe in this company and want a mid-range Windows phone. Whereas you can get a Lumia 950 for the same price on like eBay now. You know what I mean?
I can think of better ways to, like if I had a review unit maybe and actually shot some high quality good video of it, I could maybe sell it to people, or at least give them the more context of expectations of what it's actually going to be like. But without that, buying phones off of Indiegogo without like any, professional reviews and people taking a look at the product is just like one of those. I bought a few things off of these campaigns, and some of them work pretty well. My current pillow I believe is Indiegogo, and it's pretty awesome, actually. That's the thing Zach and I was talking about. This is actually the material. It's called Purple Pillow. And if you haven't seen it, it's actually, it's a squishy material, but it works very well. But that's a pillow, right? I mean, that's not as nearly as complex as a phone. And so some of these electronic things, it's, I don't know, sight unseen. Buying phone sight unseen is just still, that's the problem in the US market mainly, is why Pixel and non-carrier phones have a rough time. People still want to walk into AT&T or T-Mobile, see the phone, pick it up, look at it, and then decide to buy it. Buying it off of a few polished renders off the internet is, a lot of people don't have that $300 just to take that risk. And you can't blame them, especially when the OS and, the app situation is where it is.
So overall, WhartonBrooks are putting their phone into campaign now. So if you are interested and you are interested in this phone, you can go to their Indiegogo page and buy one. And hopefully, if enough people buy it, you can become a happy owner of the WhartonBrooks Moment phone. It's something Moment. I can't remember the name of it. I don't have the page up. But yeah, Windows Phone is not dead. New phones continue to come out all the time.
It's just being mocked now.
It is. It's still a little bit sort of. I feel bad now more than anything because I used to be like, "Oh, this doesn't matter. There's no hardware." Now it's like, now it's. I feel sorry for people who are releasing hardware. Oh well.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough situation. You really do need a big manufacturer, but like. And the weird thing, too, is Microsoft years ago, it's probably about 2 years ago, if you remember, relaxed a lot of the restrictions for Windows Mobile. They said, oh, you don't need a camera button anymore, you don't need this, and they changed the aspect ratios, and they all did that so that people who made Android phones could be like, slap Windows 10 Mobile on it. And the only company who really did that was HTC with the one M8. And I'd argue it was actually a successful phone, except for the fact it was only on Verizon and had these weird limitations before, then it went out, later. Plus, it was like 6 months after it came out with Android, which sort of took the wind out of its sails because this market moves super fast. 6 months, almost nothing is new anymore. But it was still a really good phone that probably deserved more than what it got. But we haven't seen many other companies. We saw, was it the Wind Blue? They did the Junior and stuff like that. So those are similar Android types. And those are pretty cool phones too. But we just haven't seen like Samsung or LG do something like that. And, I guess, well, let's go over into the Galaxy S8. Like there's a phone that, if they just threw Windows 10 Mobile on it, I'd be so happy, right? Like, that's a phone that... But, I mean, I know it's super expensive, but so is the Elite X3. But it's like one of those things where it's like... You would think in this day and age, Samsung would have the production capacity to be like, at the factory, we can install Windows 10 on this thing, or Samsung. And maybe order it, and it takes 3-4 weeks to get, that's fine. But like you would think that they would be able to do something like Microsoft and them would be able to get together and do something like that. I don't think there's going to be like, and I realize Samsung has some like unique hardware here and there, but like, I don't know, can't they figure this out?
I think
there should be.
I think for these the S8 specifically, the reason why there wouldn't be a Windows 10 Mobile device, apart from the fact that nobody cares about Windows 10 Mobile, is that Windows 10 Mobile isn't as adaptive as Android is. I don't think so. Like the screen on the S8 it's a different like aspect ratio and whatnot. It's always got the edge display and other stuff. I don't think Windows 10 Mobile is able to just adapt to the different aspect ratio just like that. I think Microsoft has to do work. Someone else can confirm in the chat if that's true or not. But I think that would be one of the reasons why there isn't a Windows 10 Mobile Galaxy S8. Again, outside the fact that nobody cares about Windows Mobile anyway.
Yeah, but you really think that with UWP? Because if you think of like the phone apps, like when you put them on PC, you can put them basically into that phone mode, shrink them down, and you can like make them longer and everything. I thought the whole point of UWP was this dynamic. I'm not saying there might have been some tweaking needed, but this, I'm not saying Samsung, knocks on a door, hey, Microsoft, we're releasing a phone tomorrow. Like if they had like 6 months heads up, I'm sure Microsoft could have been like working on little things here and there if they really wanted this. I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think I'm speaking as a non-engineer, of course, but like I think they could have figured some of this stuff out.
Probably, yeah. And this phone would have made perfect sense with Continuum and stuff. Although maybe they're waiting for Seashell, because then it would make more sense.
Yeah, but no one wants an S8,
Well, I do with Windows.
9 months later.
Oh yeah, and the S9.
But I'm just saying, like, there's no need for Samsung to stock store shelves with this or get carrier deals for it. But it would have been cool just to have been like, you can order a Windows 10 mobile version direct from Samsung that's a world phone for $900 or $800. Like, not many of us would have done that, but like enough of us, a few of us would have. And it would have been just a cool thing. And I just don't understand why they couldn't.
I mean, why wouldn't you do it? If they were built to order specifically, it's like, that's an extra $900 you're getting from somebody who wouldn't have normally purchased it. I wouldn't buy. I'm not buying the S8 because it's not a Windows phone. If Samsung were like, oh yeah, and we have a Windows 10 mobile option for that small minority who might want a flagship Windows 10 mobile device, I'm pretty sure that all of us listening would buy one, or most of us would.
I mean, Dell does this. Dell does this with the XPS 15. You can order used devices if you go Dell, or even the 99, or is it the 5520? I think that's the XPS 15. That's basically the workstation. You can order those with Ubuntu and all these weird mixes of different flavors of Linux right from Dell. They'll do that for you, so it's like, it's not completely unusual. It happens in the PC industry often enough. If you look at when you go to order an HP EliteBook, look at the amount of options. You could be like, permanently disable TPM and permanently disable Bluetooth, and I'd like this version of Windows on it, and they'll do it. Like, and it's not trivial stuff. Like, it's some pretty specific things that you can request. So it's like, I don't understand why a company like Samsung couldn't do this, or why maybe Microsoft couldn't convince them to.
Think
at least
another reason would be Samsung likes to completely destroy Android and just give it its own face and apps and ugliness. I really hate Samsung's TouchWiz and whatever else it does to it. You can't do that on Windows Phone. You were stuck with Microsoft's Windows Start screen, and you can, as an OEM, you can customize the start screen as you like, but you can't replace Cortana with Bixby. You can't replace Internet Explorer with Samsung's weird browser. You can't replace any of the apps, really. Whereas on Android, you can.
And that's true to a certain extent, but at the same time, Samsung's PCs, I just reviewed one this week. It's literally one of my favorite laptops I've ever used, and it's awesome. In fact, what Samsung did do with Windows 10 on it is super awesome. I put a whole section about the software because I thought it was so cool. The biggest one is the security feature where if someone tries to log into your laptop, it snaps a photo of them and emails it to you. Like, clearly Samsung has good ideas, and clearly they work with Microsoft, and they have a pretty good relationship, as this conversation will lead us to. But it seems like there were things that they could have done. Like, I don't know, Microsoft's been working with OEMs a lot on this stuff. Like, they're working very closely with HP, and we see it in the software things. And HP tells me, like, hey, we know some things that Microsoft are working on, but aren't coming out till later, but we did them now, that kind of thing. And they're getting away with it, and they're like, yeah, when the Microsoft thing comes out, we'll reevaluate, and if it's better, or we'll get rid of our thing. I don't know. This seems like a problem that could be solved. I realize the phone wouldn't have the unique but Samsung's done Windows phones before, back with all those restrictions. So,
I mean, I think at this point, Windows Phone fans will be happy with a phone that literally just is replaced with Windows 10 Mobile and still has Android-specific function buttons and stuff. I wouldn't care. Like, the Samsung phone has a dedicated Bixby button on Windows 10 Mobile. If that button did nothing, I'd be fine with it.
Well, I mean, just have it launch Cortana. Like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, they're not selling these in the stores. Like, the idea that they're going to cannibalize sales would be pretty minuscule, because you're literally not going to have, like, A and B in front of that customer and make them choose. It's going to be like, you have to go out on the internet and, like, order this thing and get it like in a couple weeks. Like, that's a small percentage of people. So it's like, who cares if it's going to Cortana?
No, you're right. You are right. I do think it's a mixture between Microsoft not, being up to scratch with all of their Windows 10 Mobile stuff, and Samsung just not giving a damn. Probably that's mostly the reason.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's probably not too... Well, I mean, that's what comes down to, right? So there's not a lot of incentive for Samsung to go out and necessarily do this, but this is where it comes now back to the fact that Microsoft is now selling, or going to be selling, the S8 through its own store. So there's definitely a tit-for-tat thing going on here. This goes back, of course, to a few years ago when Microsoft and Samsung started settling their patent disputes, and they got a lot closer. And I think it's a good thing, because Samsung makes still some of the most outstanding hardware. If you have not read my Notebook 9 review, please go do so. Actually, we did shoot a video for it this week. Mark was on vacation, so we couldn't, but we shot a video, and we'll be inserting it there and recycling. But you can watch it there. It's one of my favorite laptops if you don't need a touchscreen, right? That's the caveat. But it's such awesome hardware. It's ridiculously good battery life. It weighs 2.7 pounds, which is insane. So, I want Microsoft to have a good relationship with Samsung, because they're a partner, and their tablet, I didn't get to review it from last year, but it's a really good tablet. The new one's even going to be better. They make some really great hardware. And so I hope that this whole thing with, loading Android up with like Office apps and stuff like that, and OneDrive, and then Microsoft selling it in their stores and promoting it a little bit, I hope as we said before the podcast, someday Microsoft's going to call on Samsung for a favor. I hope that's there for you. And you would think that obviously this isn't Microsoft going, we're just going to sell Samsung stuff because we like Samsung. Like, there has to be more to it, right? There has been some sort of deal made where it's like, all right, we'll promote your things here, but we want something in return. And what's Microsoft going to get in return is the question. Is it just because you can load OneDrive now on the phone?
It could be a services thing more than anything, because Microsoft's all services. You hear that everywhere.
But they already do that. So at what point did the conversation go from, all right, we'll put your services on the phone to, you're going to start selling our phone in your stores?
Right. No, you're right.
That's a jump, because they started doing the services thing a year ago. So it's not new. But why now are they going to start to sell this Microsoft version? And we still wonder, someone asked, about, is it going to have an Arrow launcher? No, I doubt very much Samsung would allow them to get rid of TouchWiz and put an Arrow launcher instead. But it's an interesting question, like, what else is there to this? And Zach and I don't believe there's really much else to it. It's probably just literally the same phone with a couple different apps.
What it sounds like, what Microsoft's own statement made it sound like, was the phone is the same phone that you'd buy from Samsung directly or AT&T, whoever it is you'd buy it from. Then you get the phone in the store. Instead of you unbox it, they unbox it, and as you stand over their shoulder, they just install the apps from the Play Store for you.
No, come on.
I'm pretty sure it's what exactly. Let me see if I pull up the contacts. The statement they came out. You talk about something else whilst I bring it up.
Okay, that would be ridiculously stupid and very underwhelming. But then I guess if they couldn't even get a custom ROM, a specific Microsoft ROM for this, then my hopes are totally dashed of the idea of like a factory being able to install Windows 10 mobile on it, which to me seems insane, because Windows 10 mobile and Windows 10 in general with one core runs on any hardware outside of the weird Samsung Exynos processor, which I totally get. It should be able to do Snapdragon 835, and although I know there's probably some driver work that needs to be done there. So.
All right. So here's what they say. They say customers who acquire Samsung Galaxy S8 devices at the Microsoft Store will be provided a customized Microsoft image after purchase that provides Microsoft's best-in-class productivity experience, applications such as Office, OneDrive, Cortana, Outlook, and more. The image does not come preloaded on the device. Microsoft Store associates will set up each device in the store to ensure every customer is ready to work, play, and connect on their device when they leave. So it's kind of mixed messaging there. They say a customized Microsoft image, but it won't be preloaded. Somebody at the store has to set it up for you.
So there is a custom image, which is interesting.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's what custom image, because what they say custom image, we're thinking ROM, right? They might just be thinking, oh, it's just a button we press in the store and it downloads a bunch of apps. I don't know. Well, it could be anything. We have no idea.
I guess I'll have to find out. Although, so if that's the case, say it was an actual ROM, then that means Microsoft could, in theory, you need a machine to do it. It's not easy flashing those ROMs, but that'd be kind of cool. Wouldn't that be awesome? Microsoft Store should really do that. I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, Microsoft. You should have this service where each store has it. You can take an Android phone, not every Android phone, sell 2 or 3 of them. And instead of having Android, you go, give me Windows 10 mobile. And it'll be used by 1 out of every 80 people who buy that phone. But it'd be such a cool thing to do. Just be I want the Galaxy S8 Windows 10 mobile version. And then they take it to the Mac, plug it into a machine, they flat shift for you.
It's like a drug deal. It's I want the Windows 10 mobile. Just come with me. I know how to help you.
That should be technically possible. I don't see why that. They did experiment, with upgrading Android phones with Windows 10 mobile. So clearly they were playing around with this idea. So I'm just saying that'd be badass. That would solve so many problems. Many problems.
I do
wonder. It would
wonder.
save the company. The companies are still selling an Android phone. By technically speaking, it's still an Android phone that they're selling, so they get their money. They don't have to worry about stock and getting carrier approval and all this kind of stuff. And they can just give it to Microsoft. Microsoft's, all right, we're going to flash it and put Windows 10 mobile on it and do our own thing. And you probably have to sign something saying this phone you just bought, we're going to now nuke it and put a different OS on there. That is something Microsoft is technically capable of doing and should totally do. And would make so many people happy. Just the hardcore fans could just walk into that store and get that phone. And I don't know. Microsoft, take that idea and do it.
What it does as well is it shuts the fans up, because no longer will fans or Microsoft have to carry the weight of, we're not releasing any hardware right now. If Samsung, HTC, and LG have one phone that comes out every 2 years or so that can be flashed with a Windows 10 mobile ROM, that's keeping you and me happy, and I assume every other fan happy. Imagine the LG G6, whatever the new HTC phone is, and the Galaxy S8, you can flash that in a Microsoft store, or if you download the tools yourself, you can do it. That'd be cool, and I would never need a Microsoft phone again.
Okay, so we have, I don't know if you've seen Jason, it's from Microsoft. He says the why. Samsung is mass producing the phones and don't know which ones will end up at the Microsoft store. So that makes sense. Microsoft's going through probably a distributor and buying the phones. So they load the image in the store, he says. And then he was asked specifically, so are they ROMs or not? And he says, no comment.
See,
so,
we still don't know then. We still don't know if it's a ROM or if it's just something that they download.
That tells you it probably is a ROM. And that there's credence to this idea that they can do this with Windows 10 Mobile. And if you connect the dots, this is my new conspiracy theory. It's at real Daniel Rubino on Twitter. This is my new thing. Microsoft, if not, here's a free idea. Take it, run with it, and do something with it, because you'd make like the 100,000 of us who are still hardcore happy.
Well, you got to realize, it's probably more complicated than just sticking a ROM in it. You got to think about drivers and warranties.
But they can do that. They make the operating system. They work with Samsung on things. I know they work with Samsung. Like Samsung doesn't just magically create this stuff. They often. I've talked to Samsung before. They said, when we're making this laptop or this tablet, we talked to Microsoft about how to do this, and all these companies, every OEM I talk to now, HP, all that, they're all like, we worked really well with Microsoft. They're very good at, like, we had a bug with this and they fixed it and this. And it's like every company's saying that. So there has to be some way that they could possibly make this happen. You could probably even do it like online, the Microsoft store. You order up a Samsung, some guy goes into the back of the Microsoft, warehouse, pulls out a Samsung, flashes it, reboxes it, sends it to you, It'd be even to ensure it works fine, right? If they're going to do that. Like, come on.
Dan is committed to this idea. He wants it to happen now.
Because I know 1,000 fans that are left in the world of Windows Phone just heard this and said, yes, it's a brilliant idea.
To be fair, I don't think anything's a brilliant idea at this point. We're desperate, Microsoft. Are you hearing this? We're desperate.
Yes. But an S8 would be so cool to have Windows 10 Mobile on it. We all have been saying that for a long time. That's the phone that would still keep us, around. It would be Continuum ready. It would be awesome in Continuum,
we haven't even spoken about DeX.
Let's talk about DeX. We're already hitting 57 minutes here.
Yeah, let's run this quickly. So DeX is basically Samsung's Microsoft Continuum, and arguably they do it better. It's windowed, it's got Android apps. Not all Android apps will work.
Still a terrible name. Samsung is awful with names. Bixby is a horrible name. It's just... All right, go on. Sorry,
they are bad. DeX basically, it's Continuum for Samsung's Android phone. You plug it into whatever it is you plug it in, I guess a dock, which is $150, I think. Then it connects up to a display. Then it gives you sort of like a desktop UI where you have like a start menu or an app launcher even, shortcuts on the desktop, a system tray, and Windows. And they do run in Windows, so you can multitask and stuff, unlike Continuum currently. So basically, Android said, hey, Microsoft, I like that idea. I'm going to do it better. And they have done it better. It's a lot more functional, I'd say. Even Microsoft's Office apps run in like a normal tablet mode as you'd expect it to. It's not bad. I mean, it is what we were hoping Continuum would turn into, except Microsoft beat them. Samsung beat them to the sort of finish line, I'd say. Dan wrote an interesting editorial on DeX and why he thinks it's still rubbish.
No, it's not that at all. I mean, my point was the same issues that Microsoft faces with Continuum for the mass consumer market are still the same ones that Samsung faces with their release. The pricing is still very high. You got to buy the phone for $750, and the dock is rumored to be $150 extra. That's $900. And then if you want the Plus version, it's even more expensive. So that's not trivial. Not many people have a spare display just sitting around, with an extra mouse and keyboard with no PC. Like, that's just not a common scenario. So there's that, and don't forget, what Nadella and Microsoft have said about Continuum is it's like a thing we're working on, and Nadella said this, like, it's really meant for a kind of emerging markets where they never do have a first PC. It's just their smartphone is their first and only computer. And there it does make more sense. But of course, it's super expensive right now. So it's one of those, we got to wait for that technology to trickle down, just like how smartphones now are in the hands of people in emerging markets for like less than $100. Like that's that same, concept, but that's a few years out. So there's that issue. There is this issue with apps. Now, you can make the argument that it's less of a problem for Android and Samsung because they would have more people to push this. But the fact is, it's not trivial to recode these things to make them work well on the large screen. This is the reason why Android tablets are continuously mocked and don't do well in the market, despite really good attempts by companies like Samsung and LG and other companies to make these kind of devices work out there. They still, between iPad and now Surface is, taken over the tablet market. So they've been in a weird position there. So there's that issue. So it's not that these things, they can't overcome them. And then there's also the biggest one, which is need. A Samsung S8 is geared towards middle class and upper middle class people. I mean, it's an expensive device. Even, with carriers, you can go down a little bit lower, but it's not cheap. If you can afford this phone, like the chances are you probably have a laptop or a PC already or a Mac or something. Is this going to be enough for you to give those things up when you go on a trip? And that's the same issue Continuum faces too, by the way. And that's why Continuum, but the thing is, we all see how Continuum is neat. Like we all looking at, it's kind of cool. And we vision like how someday this could be a cool thing. But I would say this is why Microsoft hasn't been like putting commercials on TV with Continuum, trying to convince consumers, and you talk about that middle swath of consumers, right, who have all that money to spend, why they need this or should go out and buy it. Because it's a weird, tough thing to say. And HP at least said, well, we're going to make this for our enterprise guys, the real specific niche markets where they need this kind of particular device and it makes sense and they've asked for this. At least for HP, they don't need to do much for expenditures. There's no commercials, there's no advertising, there's no stocking of store shelves. It's direct B2B. So that makes, but Samsung's not making that argument here with, DeX. They're saying, no, it's a consumer thing for regular consumers. And this isn't just Dan, he's taking a contrarian position because it's Samsung and Android. Go talk to and look at the reactions by the Android crowd, or Engadget wrote a really good editorial going, it's a neat thing. Does anyone really want this? And, so it's not just me that's saying this. And it's a legit question. Is this, but I don't want to, Samsung gets a lot of credit for creating an amazing 1.0 that is, I would say, better than where Continuum is at this point. 2, it does help push this concept and validates Microsoft's idea by pushing it out there more, getting it into the mind share. And that's how the market will adapt to it / request certain things, bring the price down. And it's good. It's a good thing. I'm just saying this isn't going to be the fulcrum moment where all of a sudden people are like, we need these devices. Just like how the smartwatch category is not yet solidified. It's still in flux and no one's really nailed it. Apple certainly has not nailed it. So it's like, it's just one of those. Okay, Dan.
It's worth noting as well that Microsoft are working on several improvements to its own Continuum on mobile that will bring pretty much all of the same things that DeX has: a windowed mode, a system tray, you can pin stuff to the taskbar, a new start experience, just shortcuts on the desktop, basically a normal desktop experience. That'll be coming later. We don't know if it will come to existing Continuum devices or new Continuum devices. We just know that's something that they're working on.
Yeah, and Zach and I have seen some things, and when you see how Continuum is evolved and what they're doing with it, it just the differences between it and the PC, it gets so narrow. Literally, the only thing is that direct running of Windows 32 apps is the limiting factor, and that's where Microsoft, Samsung's coming from the perspective of we have an Android OS, which is popular on mobile. How do we get to the desktop? That's what they're trying to do with this. Because Android's problem has always been, okay, we got phones. Can we do anything else? And they want to go to Chromebooks and laptops and PCs. And don't make no mistake, that's what Google wants. But it's a hard problem because PCs are 90% of the market. It's the exact opposite problem Microsoft has with mobile. They're on PCs everywhere. And they're like, okay, how do we get this off of a PC onto other things? So they're both trying to do the same thing, just from different starting points.
I think personally that the whole continuum, plugging it into a dock and having it display onto a big screen, I don't think that's how Continuum or Dex or anything are going to stick around. I think where Continuum needs to go is with C# and its adaptability and the fact that, say, on a foldable device, it's a phone, then you fold it out into a bigger screen, and then that extends into the desktop mode. Then you can use it like that without having to plug it into anything else. I think that's when the Continuum experience will start clicking with people and people realizing that, oh, this is actually a useful thing, because it's cumbersome right now. Even with the Elite X3, you have to stick it on the dock or wirelessly connect it to another device for you to even be able to use it in Continuum mode. But imagine just not having to do anything, just taking the phone and going, right, open it like a book, and now it's in the desktop mode or the Continuum mode that you'd expect. That would make so much more sense. It'd be more convenient. You'd be able to use it when you're on the go. That would be when the Continuum vision or Dex vision or whoever gets there first is when consumers understand it, I think.
It's also about familiarity. The more Windows 10 is out there and more people using it on laptops and tablets and PCs and stuff, it becomes a little bit easier, because then if you can show them like a phone or a mobile device that does the same thing but kind of in reverse, right? It goes from the phone up to the Continuum mode. Like, it's like, oh, I know this. This is already the desktop thing I have. Right now, it's kind of weird if you're going from like a PC or a Mac and you're used to those apps and then you go to an Android thing, it's like, then it becomes a little strange, because now sometimes you have to buy the apps twice. You have some redundancy, but they behave differently. It's not too different than, having to use like a Mac and an Android phone and all this, and you're jumping between things. People do it, but, the idea has always been to have a more seamless experience. That's one reason why like some of the people in our audience are saying, like, if you're already in the Microsoft ecosystem and you like UWPs, like, it's really neat to be able to use that same app on all these different things and they all sync up to each other. And that's, for productivity, obviously makes more sense. So I don't know. The Continuum thing it's such a weird, we all kind of want it, and yet none of us know how to get it, kind of thing. And so, you and I both have the Elite X3. We both have the lap dock, but the idea that I'm going to take my lap dock instead of my Spectre X360 or my Razer Blade or even a Surface is still kind of weird. It's like, it's almost there. There's scenarios where I'm getting close, where I'm like, I could use this thing, but it still needs to evolve.
Should I do the ultimate test when we go to build? So I only take the Elite X3 and the lap dock.
I don't see how that works.
No, I'm not going to do that. That would be disastrous more than anything. You can't rely on it. Here's the problem with Continuum right now. You cannot rely on it. It's not powerful enough for you to be able to do that yet.
Right. It has improved more. I've been using the Elite X3 or the laptop more recently, and like HP's done some really good firmware updates and things where I'm just saying, like, the raw connectivity between the two is just instant. It's fast. It stays connected. And the scrolling and everything has been improving. Yeah, it's not 100% there, but it's like you see these improvements coming along. It's just isn't going to be fast enough. But I don't know. I just don't see people going by no one's going to go by the Samsung and be like, oh, cool, I can throw out my laptops now or my PC and use this at home instead. That'd be kind of a weird thing.
I think that might also be because Android's just nowhere near being able to do that yet. Android can't replace Windows. Android is a smartphone platform, not a desktop platform.
Right.
It's basically Samsung are doing the opposite of what Microsoft are doing with Windows. Samsung are like, all right, here's an Android phone, let's make it into a desktop. And Microsoft doing, well, here's a desktop operating system, let's make it into a phone and whatever else. They're both doing it the wrong way.
Well, and the benefit here for Microsoft is they own the OS, so they're doing this at the core level. And this is what I wrote in my article, that at its fundamentals, One Core and eventually C Shell and UWP are all about this, making everything completely flexible and dynamic, and not giving a lot of work to developers to jump into that system. Samsung's in a weird position. They don't own Android, despite the fact they like to think they do. And they are pretty, representative of what Android is today. But like, they can't go and make all this stuff happen. So they force it. They, do their own little tricks here and there as much as they can. But there's still some core limitations that they don't control the app development platform for Samsung, and that's a big thing. That means you're reliant on Google to getting around to this stuff, and that's one advantage that Microsoft still has. It's just Microsoft has a lot on their plate. It's like, but And someone asked, did Microsoft help them with this? Well, yeah, I mean, with definitely the Office apps, had to been some collaboration. Again, this goes back to the whole, there has to be something deeper going on between these two companies that Microsoft would just be like, let us do your apps for you, let us sell your phone for you. Like there has to be some reciprocation going on here that we're not privy to just yet. But I don't know. It's interesting stuff. It's technically good, I would say, for mobile, but and maybe this will light the fire a little bit under Microsoft. Maybe they saw DeX when Samsung briefed them on it, and we were like, "Whoa, these guys are moving fast." We got to get something out for the fall.
I'd hope so. Right, moving on to our very last story very quickly. Windows Phone got a new app. And Windows 10, but who cares about Windows 10? It's all about Windows Phone here on the Windows Central podcast. Lyft, basically the fake Uber, I like to call it. Lyft got an app for Windows Phone, and it's a universal app, and apparently it works some of the time. I haven't used it, so I wouldn't know. Dan, is it good?
So the app looks really nice, but it has a lot of issues. I mean, well, there's one main issue, which is when you launch and it tries to geolocate you, it actually has problems and gets stuck. But and they did release a quick fix and still don't fix that. So they're definitely having some issues, at least on my phone. But it looks really nice. It looks very Uber-ish kind of, but it's got a nice tile and everything. And it's universal, which is cool. And it's probably a good time, too, because Uber has been getting a lot of really bad press lately. So it's actually a real good time for Lyft to sort of get out there. I hope to see more. I like Lyft. I'd like to be one of those people who start using them. So I imagine there'll be a few more quick fixes before this gets a little bit better, but it has a lot of potential. It shouldn't, but it does bother me that like an app like this would come out and sort of have these glaring flaws in it. And maybe it's just me. I don't think so. There's still this bigger issue, right, that we talk about sometimes with UWP, which is it's conceptually it's good, but still early. They're still making it. And it's this quality issue with some of these apps that's still not quite there, compared to Android and iOS.
Yeah, Twitter likes to crash all the time. That's the example that pops to mind.
But it's such a good app. I still use it despite the crashing because I just love the way it works.
I think the funniest thing about the Twitter app crashing is that before one of the recent updates, it would just crash back to the start screen and you launch it again. Now, they know it crashes. They've added a pop-up. Every time it crashes, it says, would you like to submit feedback? And sometimes it displays that language in not English or not your native language. It's
actually in the feedback thing, too.
Yeah. Which is kind of it's like, we know it crashes. Now, here's an annoying pop-up for every time it does. Like, oh, thanks. And the leave feedback button, at least for me, doesn't work.
Yeah, they should be able to have an option to enable logging. Just let me have at it for about 24 hours. You'll get like so much feedback to be like, oh, that's the issue.
There's probably loads of issues, which is why they haven't fixed it yet.
Yeah, and this goes back to, this is probably not all on Twitter. This is probably like Twitter going, oh, okay, it's a memory thing with cache and all this, but, there's current restrictions with UWP and and it's going to probably, this is the problem with UWP. It still needs to evolve and get these, it's like Fitbit and GAT. Now I'm beta testing the GAT notifications for Fitbit. And I was just chatting with one of the people for Fitbit, who's in charge of all Windows 10 development. I was like, I have not received a single notification yet on my thing, despite it in beta testing. And it's not on Fitbit completely. Like a lot of it is Microsoft. They're still working through bugs through the GAT server thing and everything. And so, devs, you can blame them all you want, but at the end of the day, they're can only do so much with what they're given. And we're still facing these limitations about what devs can do and the quality of apps that they can complete. And I don't want to trivialize that. I realize UWP is not something you create overnight and be like, here's an entire platform, it's all done, But these make growing pains quite painful. And it's not a good time when you're losing your market shares nosediving for phone and PCs are struggling. It's hard. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the good news is Windows Phone isn't dead.
Right.
I'm done with my Windows Phone dad jokes.
Well, maybe Microsoft will put Windows 10 on Samsung. I'm telling you, this is a brilliant idea. There's no other reason why they a year ago had Android testing on those phones in China. I'm telling you, that was a dry run for this.
No, I think they tested it and went, this is too much work, cancel.
Probably. Yeah, you would have thought that they would have announced.
They didn't even say that they were cancelling it. It's like, oh yeah, this is a thing we're going to do, and then we never heard about it again.
It's like that smart lock screen that we talked about last week.
Oh well.
Okay, well, that sounds good. What do we got on tap for next week? I got a few reviews coming. Some are under embargo, so pretty exciting stuff. I'm having this tough time. I tend to really, my laptop reviews have been very positive and gushing lately, and I feel weird, but it's only because these companies are just really creating some amazing new hardware. But it's very exciting to report on. So I have a few of those coming next week, as well as a few videos. After this podcast, actually, my Ask Dan episode should go up, so there's another one of those coming where I take some of your questions. But yeah, what do you got coming?
Next week, I will be doing a number of breakout posts for the Windows 10 Creators Update, sort of highlighting some of my favorite features, giving them a sort of detailed write-up. You can also read my Windows 10 Creators Update review now. It went out live on Wednesday, windowscentral.com/Windows 10 Creators Update, something like that. It's on the website, you can find it. And it's 6,000 words of why this is a pretty good update, if you like reading. There's also a 26-minute video, if you want to watch that as well, in which I sort of walk through all of the most noteworthy changes. Pretty awesome. Now I'm very excited for Redstone 3. I'll probably be doing some write-ups on Redstone 3 soon as well, so stay tuned for that.
I'm already hearing Redstone 4 being kicked around.
Oh yeah, Redstone 6. It's going. They like the code name Redstone, is what we've been hearing. I don't know why. Yes. I think they just got lazy. They need to change it. I want like Bluestone or something completely different.
I kind of agree. It would be kind of nice to change it up, but I guess it's convenient. But there you go. Remember, we record this podcast on Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, where we also like to live chat with you guys after the podcast. So jump in there if you have questions for us or want to, follow along. We appreciate that. Otherwise, this goes into syndication on Mondays. And on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Beam, we also do our Xbox live cast where we get to play some video games and give away stuff. This week, we almost played Astroneer. We were super excited about it. Sadly, one of the co-developers of the game passed away, which was really tragic because the game looks beautiful and it's coming along, but unfortunately, we were unable to do it as a live stream, so we did Minecraft instead, which is always fun, running around and finding new ways to die, apparently, or kill things. But join in for that as we give away codes for games as well. Just a fun time, very relaxed and chilled out. So there you go. Thanks everybody for tuning in this week, and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
Okay, so now if I go into tools and options, I'll be able to make it so Skype doesn't turn me down. Hooray! Save. This may take a few minutes. What? To save for... What? It says this may take a few minutes to save my audio settings. What? Why would it take a few minutes? Outrageous. Right, testing. 1, 2, 3. I'm loud.